Today is August 24th, 2019, and thank you very much for meeting with me here at Elgin Theatre in Toronto.
No, thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed the show this afternoon.
I did, it was amazing.
Good, good. It's like I said, it's a different thing to actually hear the calling and seeing how it affects, instead of just seeing it dry, like as an audience member. It kind of gives you a peek back in the
Yes,
in the thing.
I never paid so much attention to the lighting until now.
Well, yeah. No, well, we can get in talking about the lighting later when you get there. I'll tell you what my favorite lighting is, or do you want me to say it now?
Well, first of all, introduce yourself, like tell me your name and, a bit about yourself.
My name's Vivianne Cowley. I work for IATSE. It's a theatrical and film union, Local 58 Toronto. I've been a full card member for 26 years now. I just got my silver card this year because we do biannual. I actually surpassed it last year. I've been working with the Mirvishes since 1986 when I did my very first show, Kismet, at the Royal Alex. So I have a very long history. My father was an international vice president, and he was actually very close to Mr. Mirvish and David Mirvish as well. So they are like family to me. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why did you become interested in this job in the first place?
Oh, well, it's actually a family business, really. My father emigrated from England. He was in theater over in England, and he really didn't want me to be in because I am small. It's a very physical job. We pick up speakers that are 60 pounds, so I actually pick up on a regular basis half my body weight, basically. But I was going through university for accounting because my mom was a bookkeeper and I was very good with numbers. And then I started doing calls and I just preferred this better. So much to the chagrin of my mom, I became a stagehand, and my brother's a stagehand. He's the head carpenter at the Roy Thompson Hall over at just across from the Royal Alex, actually. Yeah.
Are there many women in this field?
Pardon me?
Are there many female stagehands?
Oh, in the beginning, no. I'm actually the second female stagehand in Local 58 that has achieved 25 years or more. Barb Barron was our first. And we were three of us, myself, her, and Sue Chappelle, for at least 4 or 5 years to over 100 men. Now there's about 450 members in our local, and I think we're just cresting 15% now. Yeah, so it's grown. It's our business is very physical demanding, so it kind of women shy away from it a bit, but because of employment standards and stuff like that and technology, it's more approachable to us now. Yeah.
What do you remember about your very first job in theater?
Oh, my first job. Oh, that was easy. That was at the St. Lawrence Center. It was a loadout of a show. And there's a little bit of hazing that goes on. It's not mean or anything like that, but we used to have to take lamps down, not with genie lifts, with the mechanical lifts. We used to have wooden A-frames on an actual dolly. It was pinned in with a loose hinge pin, and the center stick would go up to see if you needed to get higher. And what they would do is they would put you on this thing in the aisleway, and you had to take the front of house lights down, but they would start you up really quickly and then stop you really quickly, and wood kind of goes like this. So you've got your legs intertwined in the rungs, and it was actually quite fun after a bit, but after the first one was kind of like scary, and then they were giggling at the bottom, so yeah. But it didn't scare me away. I like heights, so yeah.
I was wondering, are these kind of rites of passage, I guess, common among stagehands?
Not anymore. Not anymore. You got to remember, this was back in the 80s, and there weren't any females. So, and it was a harder business back then too. It was very small. Like I said, less than maybe 100 people for the entire city, looking after the theaters that we had contracts with. So it was more familiar, as in family, and so you're teasing your brothers and sisters. They didn't do that to me maliciously or anything like that. To them, it was fun, and they knew I didn't have a problem with heights. So, I thought it was actually, after a while, it was like, no, stop it faster, right? Because it's kind of, yeah. We do all sorts of weird, wonderful things too. Back in the day, we didn't have 5-point harnesses. I don't know if you've seen them. That they're basically over the shoulder, and there's a point on your chest, and there's a point on the back of the middle of your back, which a fall arrest goes on. So it prevents you from falling all the way. It'll stop you about 10 feet. We didn't have any of that. We would walk beams 6 inches, 4 inches wide, and focus lamps off stage and not think anything of it, because you just didn't think of falling. That's all. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds dangerous.
Looking back on it, kinda, yeah. But again, it was, when you're in your 20s, you really don't think that you're going to die. This is fun. It's like an adventure romper room kind of thing. So, yeah.
I was wondering, over these 26 years, how did technology change your job?
Oh, it's changed immensely. And in fact, the thing about, sorry, I'm a bit dry. The thing about the technology is it's daily changing. And theatrical technicians actually steal from everybody. We steal from plumbers, electricians, computer whizzes. If you look at automation, it's factory automation can be taken from and melded in. The turtles on the turntables somewhere had to be invented, not for us, but for some sort of manufacturer, and we went, oh, that'll work. We're always MacGyvering. When you start off, you're in a small theater, you don't have any money. So you take, basically, we always say, like, bubble gum and shoelaces to fit something up. So the sound, originally I started out in sound, and the sound consoles are continually being updated and changed, and they've gone from being 8 feet long and over, it used to take 6 of us to pick a Kadak up, and it was a bit of a hump, to now they're only about 2 feet long. Some of them are 2 feet wide, and you could just basically pick it up yourself and put it in a suitcase for some of the really tiny desks. So the miniaturization of phones is the same thing with our technology. The speaker systems, not so much. Different things with power and all that, but no. These things here, they've got to be about 30 years old in design, and they don't really change them that much because they work so well. They have things called ground spots now. Have you seen those?
No, I don't think so.
Basically, a ground spot, if you look it up, is a computerized Followspot, and you sit very much like what you have on your tripod, and you are manipulating a lamp that is remote on a front truss. Usually they use them for rock shows now, so that people don't have to climb 50 feet up on a truss. We've always been interested to see if we could get them into the theater to see, but you can never really emulate the source of the bulb here. These are 3Ks, so they're very, very intense, bright lamps. And it's a design choice, but even Followspots have been automated in a way. Sometimes color changers will be installed in front of like a regular source 4, and the board operator will be opening and shutting your iris and changing your color, and you basically have to make sure that you're continually on that person. And I think they use that in Wicked now. think that's what I was using. Yeah, Wicked has that. Whereas in the old days, if you were on a cross spot with a very small, like, call them a Lico on a stick, although they're normally Source 4s now, you used to have a color changer in front of it, and the board would do that. And that was the special ones, but now ground spots have kind of surpassed that. They also have RF technology, which is on Followspots as well. And the performer will wear a pack, and I've never worked with them, but the premise is that their transmitter goes back to the receiver, and that is hooked into the follow spot, which is like a ground spot kind of thing, and it will actually follow the performer. Again, that's usually used on rock shows, but yeah, I don't think anybody's used them on theater yet. I hope not, because there's a special. This is special. Sort of ramble, but running a follow spot there's a certain amount of finesse. I don't know if you watched my hands while I was doing the
Sometimes.
show. Just little teeny tiny manipulations so that we're constantly changing the balance of light, so that if two people with two different skin tones one's not getting extremely blasted, or we call it being blown out. When you're very white like me, you tend to reflect the light a lot and you become blue. And you also reflect it enough that it becomes prevalent that you've got more light on you than, say, somebody who's got a tan, right? Clothing. James Call has a very pink shirt. You've seen that. And it blooms if there's too much light on it, but you have to balance between what's on his face and what's happening here. One of the hardest things when we work on this show is Nick and Diane sit together on the plane quite often. It's a very tight spot, but she's got a beige jacket on and he's got that pink shirt on, even though it's underneath the blue. And you have to balance it off so that nobody's like too bright and they look like they're just naturally in one light. Yeah.
What's your favorite cue in this show?
I have two. I was showing you the one that I have, and the one is Janice gets up and she walks across the stage, and it's kind of like a searchlight kind of thing, the way that she comes around. But why I like it the most, if it's the perfect situation and the violin is picked up perfectly, I go out with the light on the floor, because she's in a downlight. So it's me in a downlight. I go out with the floor perfectly and also with the violin, so it goes, and it kind of sets an ominous mood that something's going to happen. The other one that I really, 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 really like is with Hannah. Hannah's song. No, sorry, not Hannah's song. Something's Missing. The entirety of the song. Because the follow spots, if we're on our game, we really take the mood of the theater to another level. I know that sounds kind of, pretentious, but the music and the actors singing and us going up musically and going out musically, especially when Barb Fulton, who plays Diane, one of my cues is she turns into my light. So it's very somber, because her whole thing with that bit of her song is that she feels survivor's guilt, because she and Nick have fallen in love and found happiness in this tragedy. So she turns into the light very softly, and then when she turns away again, if I get it just right, it fades out so that it kind of makes you feel the heaviness of what she's having. So we kind of augment what the actors are doing, and then adding the sound on that. And we've actually seen people during Something's Missing start handing out tissues, and we know that all of us have got it right, and that's when it's magical. Yeah.
Let's talk about cues.
Okay.
What are the different types of cues? I know that sometimes stage manager tells you what to do, sometimes you pick up an actor, so how does it work?
Okay, so we basically got, I'm going to probably have to change the number. I'll just do it in a row. We've got, the first one is stage management, we'll call a lighting cue. And we have a cue book. There are 712 cues that the Followspots are involved with, not counting the playout. That doesn't mean we do 712 cues, but we basically close to, if you count adjusting light and everything like that. So the stage manager will call, say, cue 420, and we'll either know from our cues that we are coming up or going out, or even just doing a part cue. A good explanation of something, a part cue. I have a cue with Beulah. She's actually, I guess, anxious woman in the plane. Just before the two Kevins yell at her because she's being claustrophobic in the plane. I come up with her on actually a spoken word because I'm going to kill her, and I come up with her because the two boys are talking about her, and then Kevin T says something, and that cues me to come up on her. She then interrupts them, and then she's kind of basically being physically told by their demeanor to sit back down. So when she's sitting back down, and Lisa has a tendency to look like she's trying to fill their names, I take her down to 50% because she's still in the cue, but she's not prevalent. So it kind of shifts the audience over here to listen to the two Kevins, and then another cue comes up, and I come back up to 100, where she now is barging in saying, I'm claustrophobic, and then we get called out with 170, and there's a bump, which means that we snap out. So that's when it, just like that. We have different types of cues. A bump is there's no time, we just go boom, and we're up or we're out. Then there's a fade up or a fade out, and what else is there? Well, sometimes different performers, we have to accommodate with size. Clint Butler is smaller than George Maswell. So instead of having a size like this, we're just a little bit more smaller because his physicality is smaller.
What's a frost?
A frost. A frost is a diffusion, actually. And basically, if you look at this light here, this lampshade is actually a diffusion. It softens the light, so we don't have a hard edge on it. And the other we have 3 colors in our lamps, and 2 are color corrections, so that it brings the color temperature down to where Howell liked overall for everybody, so that their skin tone was what they wanted. And then the frost just puts a diffusion on it, so it makes a softer light. Yeah.
So there are 3 Followspot operators here in the cabin.
Yeah.
Is it one of the jobs more difficult than the others, or is it more or less the same? Like working on this one or on that machine? Does it really matter? So
traditionally, the spot 1 is the head spot, and that's Graham Packer. He went to New York to learn off of Peter, and then he started it off in Winnipeg, and Brian and I went to Winnipeg in February for a week to learn the show. I do all 3 spots now, and I also call the show. So that's a great question for me, because I can tell you they're all equally difficult, but in different ways. Graham's Followspot picks up the most important pickups, like the Beverly pickups that are very fast when she runs in, at the end of the show saying there's a hurricane coming and we have to go. She's picked up in the dark, and she's walking very quickly. So anything that's slightly more technically difficult, spot 1 will pick up. The designers do that because they know that person usually has the most experience. All 3 of us have about the same amount of experience, so it just got to be, well, what do you want to do? Brian said, I'll do spot 2. Okay, I've got spot 3. Spot 2, because of the way that and this is my theory on this, okay? Because of the way that the lighting designers, when they're creating the show, you've got spot 1 that's picking up the most difficult thing, and then, okay, we got to add somebody in. Oh, 1, 2. All right, now we'll bring 2 in. So they keep forgetting about spot 3 kind of thing. It's like, oh yeah, we have a 3rd spot, right? So Brian and Graham do quite a lot of things in tandem, and I, with my spot, picks up the rest of the stuff that needs to be done. Oh, there's something else. Spot 3 is not doing anything. I do it. The funny thing about this is the shopping cart that comes in at the top of the show. I always knew there was a shopping cart because during preset you'd walk past it, but I never knew when it actually came in the show because I'm busy over on stage left with Janice and they're over here with the other women. So I really didn't notice when it came in, and it took me 3 months to figure out that. And I went, when I did Graham's spot, I went, oh, that's when it comes in. So there's things that you don't see in the show until you do another perspective because you're just busy doing that. Like I said, I have some sequences that are very fast and piled on, especially by the end of the show, they kind of remembered that I was there. My spot was there and they piled it on a little bit. But with spot 3, they normally try and have one spot that's not too busy and not too heavy, because especially in our city where we don't have swings like they do in New York. They all have somebody that comes in specifically for their job. We're a seniority-based local in Toronto, so if I take a day off, somebody from the big pool of people will come in. Now we've kind of got it so that we've got a couple of guys that continually come in to make it easier. If Graham leaves, I move to spot 1 and I call my own lamp. And then because nobody was, Brian never takes a day off actually, but somebody had to cover him in case there was an emergency. So because mine's not so heavy, I took up that gauntlet. Plus thing, I think with my experience in mixing Broadway shows, I have all the lines in my head anyways because of my sound experience. It's just the way that my brain functions. So I know what I have to do on 1 and 3. So filling in number 2 is easy. It's just like, oh yeah, so Diane's going to speak next. I'm not doing it. Graham's not doing it. Oh, Brian must be doing it. So, yeah.
Isn't it confusing if you run all 3 spots without looking at the script anymore? Like sometimes, like, you know, is it my cue or is it his cue? Like if you do all of these.
I have actually almost picked up Graham's cues, but how I get rid of that is I have a 4-day system, and it also keeps me from getting bored in the show. One day I do only my lamp and I just do my lamp. The next day I call Graham's lamp. So I'm reminding myself what he does. The next day I remind myself what Brian does, and on the 4th day I actually run my lamp and call it as if I was running Graham's lamp.
Wow.
Yeah. So the most difficult cue that I have, I don't know what Graham is but the sequence of the planes, because they're not in order. It's not like we go Graham, Brian, me. They're different. So when you're running, I know my pickups very quickly, but then if I have to add in Graham's, I have to remember that I have to call my lamp and actually do Graham's thing. To me, it would have been easier for me to do my pickups and call his, but that's not how it works. I have to tell somebody else what I'm supposed to be doing on my lamp while I'm doing his job. So it's like a splitting of your brain.
Wow.
Yeah. And sometimes I do sit there and go, oh no, that's not mine, that's Graham's. Yeah. But in the other part is if he's sneezing or something like that, I can pick his cues up if he's like, you know, if he's having a coughing fit or something. So it's kind of like a safety net.
And if someone replaces one of you he does it without any tech week, without any training?
Sometimes, if we're going for for a week, they'll come in for 3 shows. So they basically have to sit in the chair right from the get-go. And when I went to Gander, the first night I called the show for the person sitting there because it was a lot easier, and Graham just called the cues that we had to fade in and out. And then the next night I was still here just in case there was a problem, but Graham called it. So it kind of, it's a 2-part thing.
Let's talk about Gander. What was it like?
Oh, Gander's fun. It was really weird. I literally landed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I left here after the show at 10 o'clock at night, went to the airport, got on a plane, and then landed at 3 o'clock in the morning. And there was darkness and there were no trees. The only thing I could see literally were the lights from the plane. And then it weirded me out because in Toronto, gangplanks everywhere. You literally walk down a set of stairs and walk on the tarmac to 75, 100 feet to get into the airport. And it's really tiny, but it's pleasant. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, there were all these people picking people up. And I'm like, oh no, how am I going to get to my hotel? But there's 14 cabs in Gander, in total, and 3 of them were there, but nobody was in their cab. And I'm like going, oh no. And I was kind of standing there, and a couple of people who were waiting for people goes, oh, he's just smoking over there. Okay. And everything's 5 minutes from the airport. Everything. It's bizarre. And the people are so wonderful there. It was just like being at home. Even though I'm from Toronto, which is massive and thought of being very sterile and nobody talks to each other, it's not like that here. Canada is Canada. Everybody talks to everybody. If you see somebody lost on the street, you stop them. And in Gander, it was because they know who's in the town, so it's oh, you're from away. Mm-hmm. And then when they hear you're come from away, it's a totally different story. It's whoa, yeah. But the Murbai project is Diane. How that got to Diane Davis is a Facebook friend. We all became friends through this from the openings and everything. And Diane knows that I sew because of the quilt that is in New York. And she teased me saying, well, why don't you try this? And I went, oh, okay. And I looked on the website and it said local tail makers only. And I went, oh, well, sorry, I can't do it. And then, because Diane and I are sort of the same, we're a little bit cheeky. I emailed them and I said, I'm from away, but I'm also come from away, and I don't know if you would allow me to, participate, but I'm willing to fly in and do measurements, and we can have some beer, maybe we'll do measurements, and I guess I have the same kind of sense of humor, like all Canadians do. We're kind of goofy, and they said yes. So I came up with a concept. I did run it past David Hine first because I didn't want to get in trouble with the production, and they said as long as I wasn't using the logo, that was fine. And now I'm not sure what Randy and Sue Frost have up their sleeves, but they've gotten in touch with Hassan, and they're going to do something together because Sue Toth, who's one of our promotional people, I contacted her to tell her what I was doing, and it all snowballed, and it's in their hands now. But it's been a collaboration because this tail, I can tell you guys what it is now. The tail is an airplane fuselage with the flight numbers in the windows, and then on the fin it's the Newfoundland flag and all the places where people stayed. Well, I didn't know where anybody really stayed because we only have a limited amount in the show, so I contacted Beulah, and Beulah Cooper got I guess in touch with Claude and with Derm, and she gave me the entirety list of where everybody stayed. And then I contacted Beverly Bass, and Beverly got me in touch with the Aviation Museum in Seattle, because oddly enough, trying to get it through the Canadian Aviation. Nobody knew where anything was, and then there's this museum in Gander, but they didn't get back to me in time. They were on fishing or something, which is fine. But Beverly got me to the aviation thing, and two guys who do all the research and stuff like that, they were blown away. They went, yeah. So 5 people and me making the tail, and that's how that came. So the Murby tail, 2020, it's only $25, and it's supporting things in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's Planned Parenthood this year, and also the Furniture Bank and the St. John's SPCA. So great causes. They raised $300,000 last year.
Wow.
For mental awareness. I think it's mental health services. Because you being in Memorial will say, like, being in St. John's, you basically have everything on hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you go outside of St. John's, it becomes more difficult, right?
Yes.
Same thing like with Daffodil House is, and I'm sure Diane won't mind me saying this, but Diane Davis actually was a recipient from Daffodil House when she had her cancer. So it's very important for them to be able to have beds available for people that are coming into St. John's for cancer treatment. So if anybody's not in St. John's or in Newfoundland, please support Daffodil House, because it's not like us who can walk down University Avenue and hit 5 hospitals, right? What else would you want?
Well, I was wondering if someone is interested in becoming a stagehand, like how old is too old to start cold?
How old is too old?
I mean, if I don't have any theater experience at all, where do I start?
Well, for you, if you're at Memorial, you could go to the theater at Memorial and start in your college. I did that at University of Waterloo. That's how I supplemented my beer. No, I supplemented my food budget. That's what it was. Yes, I worked at the Humanities Theater. You pick that up. A lot of kids start in high school because I can't sing a note. I really can't. And I wanted to participate. I mean, I was very big into running and gymnastics and stuff like that, but I also liked theater, but can't sing a note for a bean, right? So you basically get stuck on the technical side, plus my father. But I really did do that because I did try out, and they went, thank you, come again. But university or even community theater, there's always places that need people, and you learn on the job. You don't necessarily have to be in Broadway to participate in theater, and that's the beautiful thing about it. Even working with kids, be silly, or change your major in university. Ryerson, Sheridan, and I'm gonna get nailed for this. I don't know if George Brown has it. York University has a theatrical thing. Waterloo has it. Almost every university has an arts program. Yeah.
I wonder, like, if someone is too old for university, like, are there any apprenticeships or internships? Like, are there any ways to learn how to do it without paying fortunes for university?
It all depends on where you want to go with this too. Nowadays, we are finding that it is better for us to have people that are coming out of the university and the community colleges, because they're getting practical experience while they're doing the job. If you're coming from, say you have an interest in video, which you do, you could go to a video shop, like a video and audio shop, and come out of there, because then now you've got you're getting hands-on technical experience, and that would propel you into something of a Broadway experience, because you're coming with that skill set. The bygone days of just showing up and kind of getting it on the fly is kind of going now. That's like 30 years ago. Now you're coming into the theater with something with it on the table. But I mean, you have video experience, so that's different. I mean, with the video experience, you'd probably be expected to have QLab, PowerPoint. I'm not much on video, but to be able to put a video wall together and know how the signal flow goes, changing bulbs and projectors, lining up the projectors, that's a major thing that they normally do when we have projectors in shows. But this kind of basic thing you would most likely learn if you were even just doing community theater and they had a Followspot. Yeah.
There are so many different types of stagehands. How do you choose like what's the right role for you? Like why Followspot? Why not being a carpenter, for example, or I don't know, anyone else?
Oh, okay. For myself, my dad was a carpenter, and he was an electrician for the National Ballet of Canada as well, carpenter, and my brother was an electrician for the National Ballet as well, and he's now the head carpenter. I shied away from carpentry because it's usually really heavy. I have done it. In fact, I loaded in the first version of Wicked that came in on carpentry, and it was big and stupid. And I've done opera. We had 4 by 16, like 4 feet by 16 foot deck pieces that 4 of us would pick up. And by the end of the season, we were just like throwing them. The first week we were all like dying because it was like so heavy. Sometimes you just have a proclivity to something. I basically got thrown into sound when I was younger because Les Mis had a modesty clause with the women that the body mics couldn't be changed by men because they basically stripped down to the waist.
Oh.
So that was a necessity. Not so much now. Some performers do ask. I have done Billy Elliot on sound, and all I did was look after the little girls because there was a clause that they did not want any of the male technicians. It wasn't because of anybody, it was just the wishes of the company. It took me a long time to break the glass grid, as we call it in the theater, to mix shows. I had to do really poorly paid things. Not that the productions were crappy or anything like that, but it was like I had nothing. Like I literally at one time came and my snake had been run over by a forklift, and all my XLRs were square. And I looked at the technician and I went, "We need to get a new snake." And he goes, "Why?" And I go, "Square peg, round hole." Really done sound in a tent. I did the Railway Children, which was the lowest contract that I've ever been on, but I learned so much that it was me paying my dues, and I've never had a problem with that. I've gone and taken myself to Texas. I've gone down to New York and paid on my own dime to learn my craft. In Toronto, when you become an apprentice, we try our best so that you hit all of the departments, so that you have an understanding of the entirety of the show, not just your own little department. And then you can understand better when things are happening around you, like, we can't do this right now because they need to get the wall up. Or you need to let us put that through because if you do, then it blocks our hole to get down to the pit. We fly things, so your knots are all basically the same, but you use them in different manners. Followspots are basically one of the first things that you do when you're in an electrical department, when you're on a show, because it's deck electrics is a little easier normally, and so the older people want to do it because they have less to do usually. And you don't have to watch the entirety of the show, which you do for Followspots. We're on for 100 minutes here. I only have one song off, which is Me in the Sky. So, and if somebody got sick or something, I could do it for them, but that's my one break, and if I have to go to the bathroom, I run. Yeah.
We have 15 minutes left. Is there anything you would like to talk about?
Maybe about women in theater. We're still not, this is not me bad-mouthing the male population of theater. It's just, it's indicative that females in the workplace and in the world are still not on par, I would say. In our union, we do get paid the exact same amount of money. Like, there is no wage disparity for stage technicians. You are a stage technician. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. Opportunities, sometimes we get a little overlooked, and we've had to basically jam our foot in the door. I said to a couple of the younger girls, I said, you don't have to pick that up by yourself anymore, because Barb and I already did that. We have the bad backs and everything. Things have changed. You have a friend to pick up with that. We're all here to make sure that everybody works safely. Sometimes the guys are a little bit pushy, you know, and that's like normal, but I'd like to see it so that we had more opportunities. For designers, it's still very male-oriented. For
both sound and lighting, or only lighting?
Less lighting, like more. There are more females in lighting, less in sound, and that needs to change. Also, mixers, we're still behind on the amount of people that actually do that. And it's unfortunate. Same thing, just simply with directing, choreographers. You know, the female presence needs to be brought up, and I don't know if that's a producer thing or if it's just indicative to how theater in itself has gone, and that we're still behind the curve, and we need to speak up a little more. You know, because we're equally competent. You know, videographers, same thing. You know, you find with cinematographers, there's not as many women as there are men. You know, and so you and yourself, if you're going through for cinematography, are going to have that situation happen. And you know that you're never alone either. If you need help, there's a lot of women that are behind you, around you, that all you have to do is reach out, and we're going to go to bat for you. You know, I have a really good friend down in New York, Joanna, and she's actually a sound designer now, full-fledged, and I'm so proud of her. But it took her a long time to get where she was, to just break the assistant barrier and for people to hire her. And she helped me speak up so that I could mix. I literally, on Dirty Dancing, I was pulling wire in the trap room, and the head of department that was going to be for the run came and says, "You staying with me so that you're my RF amp tech?" And I went, "Nope." And he goes, "Why?" And I go, "Because no one will let me mix, no one will teach me, so I'm out. I'm going to go find some pokey little show, and I'm going to do it." And he went, "No, no, 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 no." And I went, "No, no, 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 no." And he made time for me. And I can't thank, his name's Steve Henshaw, and I can't thank him enough, because he believed in me, but we also have to believe in ourselves, right? And I think that's, with women, that's what we have to do. I'm sorry for being on a soapbox, but
no, it's very important.
You know, it is. We need to fix this.
That's what I love about Catherine Boy, like Me in the Sky story of Beverly Bass, you know?
Very true, and that was happening at the same time. I said that to Beverly. I said, because you were in the 80s, right? And she goes, "Yep." And I go, me too. You know, and it's very hard to break that ceiling, you know. And the funny thing is we aren't, even our my mother, where feminism in the 70s was supposed to be the all-encompassing, that's not when it started. It started with my great-grandmother, actually, with the suffragettes, where they went out and got the vote. And then my grandmother being in the factories during the war, you know, and then having to take a back seat when the men came home, you know, after taking on all the responsibility. And then my mom's group was the feminists and the ERA and stuff like that. So we just have to keep going at it, you know, and make sure that the daughters and the daughters' daughters have it easier, you know, because there's no reason to be different, you know, other than physicality, which you have to know your own limits anyways. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
No, thank
This is
you.
the end.